2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Make sure you're checking out our 100 episodes of Baltimore Positive, including Don and I celebrating 100 and getting into it with Baltimore City School CEO Sonia Santelises. Had a great conversation about education in Kerwin with her, as well as Police Commissioner Michael Harrison. But I am on to Cleveland, and Luke Jones is on the backfields in Owings Mills, and I am sort of cleaning out the Rolodex of all the people that I haven't had on the show recently. One of the reasons I haven't had this guy on recently is probably because the Blue Jays haven't played the Orioles in any meaningful baseball in like 3 years. We're both despondent about that, but at least he's got a hockey team going on. And at least we have Elvis, Brad Gagnon. I don't know what to say since the last time you and I got together. Lamar Jackson was a concept, I think, back in the summer when you and I chatted, and now this is a reality where I'm literally flying down to South Florida next week to plan Super Bowl, road trip, hotel, bars, parties, trail, things to do. And we just can't sort of get over the fact that we've tripped into this thing here.
Yeah, it's, we always talk about the Patriots. I don't want to call it luck, but the Patriots' luck with, the fact that fans had been so spoiled that support that team since essentially the turn of the century. But let's not underestimate what Ravens fans have been fortunate enough to enjoy, which is possibly, if your planning is correct and your hunch is correct about Miami this year, possibly 3 Super Bowls in 2 decades with 3 different starting quarterbacks, which is pretty phenomenal and something that a lot of other fan bases would be remarkably envious of. In fact, practically every other fan base, aside from, I suppose, maybe the Patriots, and I guess you could throw like the Steelers, Packers, teams like that in there, but none of them during that time frame have won 3 Super Bowls either. Again, only 2 right now, but the fact is that they're the Vegas favorite for good reason. They have the MVP, and there's a lot of reasons for optimism regarding this team right now.
Brad Gagnon from the fighting city of Toronto up in Canada. You can follow him at Brad_Gagnon. That's Gagnon. He's out at Bleacher Report and a bunch of other places following primarily the National Football League, but we get into it about all sorts of things. And watching this for 10 weeks from afar for you analyze the game. You're a young guy but an old soul, and you like to write about the game across the board. For what this has meant over 18 months and revolutionizing the position and this thing where the team lost Flacco and Weddle and Mosley and Suggs and then can rebound to this level. It's an incredible testament to the organization, and I have not let a segment or a day go by without talking about Eric DeCosta and the sort of organizational buy-in that we're going to take this quarterback, but then we're going to build everything around him, and there's going to be an economical way to do this, there's going to be a sane way to do this, and there's going to be a way to win doing this that John Harbaugh has taken on and Greg Roman has taken on. This thing feels like a freaking symphony right now. I feel like I've flown into the 99 Rams or something,
Yeah, and the point you make about the support for that quarterback is really so integral. I mean, you look at Baker Mayfield, who was taken at the top of the very same round in which Lamar Jackson was chosen, and you look at his success as a rookie, and then you look at his failures as a sophomore, and so much of it has to do with the fact that Freddie Kitchens has not put him in a good spot, the fact that the organization has been surrounded by turmoil, the fact that the front office has again dealt with a lot of tumult. He's got, diva wide receivers causing problems and causing distractions in the media. You have the opposite situation with Baltimore, and it's entirely possible that if Lamar Jackson was in Cleveland or any other environment, practically, he wouldn't be having as much success. It does take, a family, an organizational kind of familial process in which you mentioned Eric DeCosta, you have Ozzie Newsome, just the very fact that his last draft is looking like a hell of a legacy for him, and is obviously still associated with the organization. You have John Harbaugh, who not only was already a well-accomplished and venerable head coach for over a decade with that organization, who's won a Super Bowl, but also a guy who continues to evolve and who we've seen become much more aggressive in terms of his mentality, his play calling, his approach to situational football, which is something that really kind of is in lockstep with the evolution personnel-wise, in particular at the quarterback position, where you look at Lamar Jackson and you talk about the fact that, yeah, he is revolutionizing the quarterback position. He is revolutionizing the offensive side of the game. We saw clues. We had clues this was coming. We saw it from Michael Vick. We saw it from Robert Griffin III. It wasn't sustained in those cases. But those I think, were steps toward this being the future of the quarterback position, where we're not seeing a lot of success from those typical pocket passers, those Joe Flacco's to an extent now, and we're seeing a lot more success from the guys like Lamar Jackson, like Deshaun Watson, like Patrick Mahomes, and like Russell Wilson, who really are the future of this league at that position, none of whom are your standard pocket passers. So the Ravens have embraced that, and they've supported him both in terms of personnel, in terms of scheme, in terms of mentality, and it's paid off, and it's culminated in that symphony that you're referencing.
He is Brad Gagnon. He's out doing the Bleacher Report thing and catching up on Lamar and all the other things. We were sitting here saying, look, beat Cleveland this week, and they're a 10-point favorite. I think Cleveland's going to give a good shot. I mean, at some point, the Ravens are going to fumble it once or twice in a game, and things are going to go wrong like they did against the Jets and the special teams, and they're going to find themselves in a game that they shouldn't be in. And that might even happen in January against the Chiefs, against the Patriots, whatever it's going to be. But it feels like Pittsburgh will be a week off. It feels like the next week will be a week off. It feels like they will be well rested and very, very healthy heading into the 11th of or 12th of January, playing a team they probably have already beaten in Buffalo or Houston or whomever it may be. And then there would be that Chiefs or Patriots thing that it feels like the road is made a lot lighter. They literally are not going to have to get on a plane again after Sunday night if they can win in Cleveland this week. And yet Cleveland was such a challenge for them 10 weeks ago and beat the snot out of them. And to your point, we're finding a whole different thing when I get out to the Christmas Story house where, Brad, as you know, I always have the leg lamp on the studio set here. I'm actually going to go to the real leg lamp place this weekend for the holidays. I know I'll shoot my eye out. But, this is the amazing part of this is that the Ravens are 12-2, but it's also that the Browns really kind of stink.
Yeah, I mean, this division was supposed to become Cleveland's this year, and the Ravens were an afterthought, even to an extent, behind Pittsburgh. It was Cleveland's emergence. It was, can Pittsburgh sort of sustain? And then it was, Lamar Jackson sort of shocked the league a bit last year, but his completion percentage was still low. There's still questions about his accuracy. Now we have an entire offseason of defensive coordinators preparing for him. Watch him come back to earth. Watch that defense, which lost, as you mentioned, several key veterans, become a liability. I would have guessed it. I would have thought that defense would be more of a liability than an asset this season. I was completely wrong on the Ravens. I thought Lamar Jackson would have trouble in his second season. I thought he was so raw being drafted that there was still a lot of development that had to take place. There still is a little bit of development that has to take place, but that's what's so scary because he's the MVP anyway, and will be the youngest.
When the biggest development you need to worry about is ducking better and getting out of bounds better and hook sliding a little earlier. I mean, that would be the one part of his game is, dude, don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Yeah. Because that's the word from everybody is this sustainable? And I know it's sustainable through February 2nd. That's all I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fear, of course, is that all it takes is one moment, one hit, one play, one turn. And that's the case with all the 2,000-odd players in the NFL. Obviously, it's the case more to guys that expose themselves more often. Lamar Jackson actually has something, and you guys see it as much as, if not more than I do, where he does avoid those blockbuster hits pretty damn well, just as Russell Wilson does, just as a lot of quarterbacks who sort of just have figured it out in terms of how to avoid that. Now, sometimes they're unavoidable, and again, it only takes one moment. And when you expose yourself as a rusher, as often as he does, it's always a possibility. It's always a possibility that something might happen to a guy, who has carried the ball 159 times this season, and might be 180, 190 by the time the year is done, and 200 by the time the playoffs are done. And so that's a factor. It's always a factor, and it's more of a heightened risk with him than it is with some other quarterbacks. But again, getting back to the overall point of support, the defense. I mean, the opportunism, the fact that they're making plays consistently, they're scoring touchdowns, they're recording interceptions, they're supporting him beyond just the offensive support that he's getting and the aforementioned personnel and culture support that he's receiving. And so, they haven't missed a beat on that side of the ball. That's where we all figured they're definitely going to come back to earth. Okay, the defense is going to be in trouble. They lost several key veterans. They don't have C.J. Mosley and Terrell Suggs. And sure enough, they've just found a way. And, some of the guys they brought in, of course, Earl Thomas, that helps a lot as well. But that's what really is almost as surprising to me as the Lamar Jackson phenomenon, is the fact that, they give up only 6 points against the Rams, 7 against the Texans. They hold the 49ers and Bills to fewer than 20. It's just consistently dominant after being one of the worst defenses in football the last time they played Cleveland. After that game, it was the end of September. The first month of the season had closed. They had one of the worst defenses in football. I believe they had the worst defense in terms of yards per play allowed. They had only 4 takeaways in those first 4 games of the season, and they were 2-2. And yet, there's the revival. They beat Pittsburgh 26-23, and they haven't lost ever since that until now they face the Browns again. So hopefully it's not bookends, and indeed they just keep steamrolling through, at least for Ravens fans' sake. You definitely get the feeling that's going to be the case.
Brad Gagnon says we'll definitely have the feeling that's... I mean, everyone is so definitive about the Ravens. You know what I mean? Like, this is why I'm getting on a plane and going down to Miami and booking trips and doing all this stuff. Everyone I talk to is so definitive of who is going to beat them. And I guess that's why I sit here and say, all right, well... The Chiefs, the Patriots, the Bills would all give them a punch. I think the Texans would give them a better punch the second time around than they got the first time around. And yet you're going to see 2 of the above, right? And which 2 and how will it all come about? I guess that's why they're going to play the rest of these games. But to some degree, we're lighting the purple candelabra around here and trying to watch it all unfold and wondering who gets to our front porch. I hope it's not Patrick Mahomes, quite frankly. I don't know that I want to see the Chiefs in here in the championship game, and I think they're the most likely candidate.
I agree, and I think that, it is about when you peak, right? I mean, look at the Saints on Monday night. You wonder if they, with Drew Brees being injured in October and Alvin Kamara being injured mid-season, if they're all of a sudden going to hit a stride right now. And you get the same feeling with the Chiefs in the AFC, where they went through that rash of injuries earlier this year. Patrick Mahomes looks like he's getting healthier week by week. The defensive line's gotten healthier, et cetera, et cetera. And you wonder if they're hitting their stride right now. And so, you never know when you're going to run into a buzzsaw. You never know when you're going to run into a hot team. Of course, the Ravens themselves are a buzzsaw. They're a hot team themselves. But, I would be scared of the Chiefs. I don't know. I mean, the Patriots, you're scared of the lore, right? You're scared of Bill Belichick. You're scared of the history. You're scared of the fact that they just seem to have a hex on the rest of the league. But, you look at them on paper. You look at what they've done offensively this season. You look at Tom Brady's clear and utter decline. And you just think, I'm not that scared. Even though all that lore is terrifying, I'm still not that scared. Whereas you look at the Chiefs and you think, oh, man, this is still Patrick Mahomes. It's still Tyreek Hill. It's still a team that is loaded on essentially both sides of the ball, particularly obviously offense, but even have some great members of that defense that can make plays, just as the Ravens are. So that would scare me. That would. And again, it takes one bad day. The one thing about the Ravens is you can see room for regression if somebody is to figure out Jackson. Now, that's a huge if. But because he's such a game-changing player, if he's not able to be a game changer, then all of a sudden the game has been changed in the opposite direction. So, it's by no means is it a lock. They're going all the way to the Super Bowl. If one of these teams that has had the advantage of, getting 4 quarters of tape with their personnel against Lamar Jackson is able to make the necessary adjustments, a head coach like Andy Reid may be that kind of guy who's been doing this for a long time, then that could be problematic. And the Chiefs do look like they have a lot of momentum right now. So, if I had to pick an opponent that I'd be most terrified of amongst that AFC playoff field, I think it's pretty clearly the Chiefs. And honestly, compared to the Patriots, I think I'd be more scared of the Texans, possibly even a team like the Bills that is so stout on the defensive side of the ball they might be able to do something with Jackson. I think the Patriots would actually be a very favorable matchup for the Ravens, who historically have actually done very well against New England, especially there in Baltimore at home.
Here's Brad Gagnon. You can find him at Brad_Gagnon. He's a national writer at Bleacher Report. He's up in Toronto, Canada. All right, the one thing we know, we're not going to have to face any more than one of the NFC teams, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and all that, but boy, the NFC is more formidable. You know what I mean? I think beating the Packers and the Niners back-to-back, or the Packers and the Seahawks, and I know the Ravens beat the Seahawks. I mean, the Ravens don't have to take a backseat to anybody in this tournament, no doubt about that. But the NFC side of the tournament certainly looks to be more powerhouse type of teams, and the way Drew Brees is commanding that offense right now. And sort of legendary characters in Brees and Rodgers, still in this tournament, right?
Yeah, and again, you look at Lamar Jackson, doesn't have, much playoff experience. Obviously has the one game last season. And then all of a sudden you're in a Super Bowl against Russell Wilson, who's, 1-1, been to 2, or Aaron Rodgers, who's 1-1 as well, Drew Brees, who's won a Super Bowl. All those guys have so many playoff games under their belt, so many epic playoff performances under their belt. Dallas, San Francisco, Minnesota, not quite the same, level of fear, but those teams are probably less likely, at least Dallas and Minnesota, to be the team that Baltimore meets if it gets to the Super Bowl. So, of those top 4 teams, the 4, 11-3 teams, Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, and San Francisco, you definitely have an unfavorable matchup in terms of experience, and there's sort of that been there, done that factor with the Seahawks, Packers, and Saints, all of whom have been Super Bowl champions in the last decade or so. San Francisco, that's intriguing. It's a different ballgame where Jimmy Garoppolo is essentially as green as Lamar Jackson, and the team is essentially as green as the Ravens are. This is another team that sort of shocked the league this year, that wasn't very good last year, and they'd kind of face the same questions. I don't know which one I trust more. I think it's probably the Ravens, just because I think they're actually the more powerful team altogether, and I think Jackson obviously has an advantage over Garoppolo, and I'll take Harbaugh over Kyle Shanahan, but again, you look at that defense, you guys just saw them in a close game in Baltimore, all of a sudden at a neutral site. That whole thing about the team that lost the first meeting having an advantage in the second one, that would be something that could potentially work to Baltimore's disadvantage in this case. So whatever happens, you get the feeling this year's Super Bowl is going to be one of those 1, 2, 3-point spreads. We're not getting a team that's going to be heavily favored unless someone like the Rams sneaks in and kind of just trips their way to the Super Bowl and have to go up against someone like Baltimore or Kansas City.
Brad Gagnon's up in Toronto, which means he'll be disappointed like we'll be next year with our baseball teams. Anything you want to say about baseball at all, dude? Baseball just sucks, right? Whether it's Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame, whether it's the Astros cheating, whether it's them boo-hooing about minor league baseball, and they want to break up minor league baseball while they go giving guys $300 million who, it just sucks. And thank God for the Ravens, right? Thank God for my purple lava lamp that's warming up here in the studio as it's winter, and my 12-2 football team, because baseball just, they just kick you in the groin. You know what I mean?
Well, you're right. You gotta just embrace what you've got going well in your city. And right now the Blue Jays are a bummer, just because it's a rebuild, and that's just going to be the process. And there, a lot of folks here expected them to spend some more money this off season as they sort of try to build toward that goal of being really good in 2021, but at least being successful or more competitive in 2020. That hasn't really happened yet. I don't know if a lot of folks trust the current regime to really ever do that because of their emphasis on the farm system. But again, you guys have the Ravens, who just might be the Super Bowl champions this year, at least are the favorite right now. We've got the Toronto Raptors in this city. They've had a remarkably good follow-up season to an NBA championship campaign in spite of losing Kawhi Leonard in free agency. So that's been kind of enjoyable to see this team have so much gusto and battle on a week-to-week.
It's crazy. Toronto's become like a basketball town. It's nuts, right? I mean, I was sitting
in a bar the other day, and there was Leafs were on one TV at the end, the left end of the bar. The right end was Raptors. I was with a buddy of mine having beers for his birthday, and we had a better chance to slide into the Leafs area than the Raptors. And there's guys in their middle-aged men sitting there drinking their beers, dissecting the Raptors as diligently as the Leafs. It's amazing how much success can change the value of one sport versus another in any city, including Toronto.
But they never debate the greatness of Geddy Lee. Never, ever, ever. There's only one Geddy Lee. I'll give Alex and Neil too, but I mean, that's we'll save that for All Saints Day. Brad Gagnon, my favorite Canadian, joining us here from Toronto, Canada, and you can find him out at Bleacher Report as well as Brad_Gagnon. Always good to visit with you, dude. We'll pitch about baseball later. In the meantime, we're pointed on Miami, man. We might win the Super Bowl. Isn't that kind of cool? I think so.
That would be pretty awesome. I hope that I think I'm going to get down there this year. I hope to see, if I do see you, either you're going to be in crazy Ravens mode, or hopefully you won't be too bummed out if they're not. I think I get the feeling your energy is going to be high regardless of who's in that game.
If you're coming down for the championship game or something crazy like that, you will not eat a tourist crab cake in my town on the 18th, okay? So just circle that. You let me know. If we're hosting the AFC championship game, I'm having a party at my condo for anybody that wants to come. How about that?
Beauty. I'll be there.
All right, Brad Gagnon joining us from Bleacher Report. Nasty at WNST.net finds me if you want to go to Miami. I am putting together road trips. I really am going down there. You really will see it on Facebook. You really will see we'll have hotels and tickets and transport. All that stuff that we did in New Orleans, we're doing it again. God, it was fun. I don't know what I'm going to do to top the parade, but we're going to have to figure something out. Send me ideas, South Floridians. I just want ideas on how we win 2 football games in January. That's all I want. Nasty at WNST.net. The buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault does come in Toronto, Canada. It came in Tokyo. It definitely came in Korea last week in Seoul, where I did the post game from Buffalo. Not being in Buffalo, I was in Korea. Buffalo sounded nice. Korea sounded better. I did like Korea better than I like Buffalo's, but not by much. I love you guys in Buffalo. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports, and I got to take a break to go eat some great Amici's food. So much love to everybody at Amici's. Amici's.